Hello everybody, Mark Schaftlein with you, and this is the Schaftlein Report. We're going to cover everything. We're going to cut through all the propaganda, give it to you straight from left, right, and center. The opinions are what counts. Hello everybody, Mark Schaftlein with you, and this is the Schaftlein Report. Folks, there is never a dull moment in the Trump administration, and to deal with that, I am bringing back my longtime colleague, Richard Battle from the great state of Texas. Richard, welcome back to the show. As we say, sometimes the current shifts and things tend to go in different directions. Richard, let's start with the topic du jour. There does seem to be some shifting in ICE one day, and then the next day it sort of shifts back. Is this a softer tone from the president, Tom Holman, or business as usual?
Well, first, thank you for having us back with you, Mark. And I think that President Trump has an arsenal of resources in how he pursues this in Minnesota, and he has an advantage over Mayor Frey and Governor Walz because they can't hand off somebody else. They're there, they've got to deal with this, and they have pressure from their constituents as well, whereas President Trump hasn't been directly involved on the ground before. And I believe him bringing in Tom Holman to replace Kristi Noem was like bringing in the right relief pitcher to come into the game. He was able to do that, whereas Walz and Frey don't have someone like that from a strategic standpoint. Holman also is a non-political person. He succeeded under Barack Obama's administration. And so him coming in gives the president an opportunity to reframe everything and apply different strategies and tactics on the ground.
I agree with that, Richard. And, they came out and said there's going to be 700 less agents. There's still a force of 2,300 ICE agents in Minneapolis. And Holman has reiterated, that they are going to continue deportations. So, outside of the change at the top, which was obviously, I think it was needed because this thing literally was spiraling out of control. And some of the commentary, I don't often disagree with the Trump administration, as do you, but, some even liberal commentators are saying, believe what they're saying, not their lying eyes. We did see some things. This is not to excuse protesters because, again, I think what's misconstrued here, people have a right to peaceful protest. They don't have a right to get in the way of ICE and do the things that they've been doing up in Minneapolis, Richard, at the encouragement literally of the governor and of the mayor. So that some of this blame goes both ways here.
Well, absolutely. And I think right now the ability to let 700 people withdraw, if you will, is not a defeat. It's a reallocation. And I think that they're partially able to do that because of a key phrase that Holman said this week, and that was that they've had unprecedented cooperation from the sheriffs, and he had not gotten a no answer from any sheriff in Minnesota. So if they're able to work with them and go into the jails and send one agent in and bring one bad guy out, that saves a lot of people. That also puts a lot of pressure on the city and the state as well, who are not cooperating with ICE. The mayor acted like he had no jurisdiction over the jails. And if you really listen to that interview they had with him this week, I think it showed that he didn't really understand what he was talking about with regard to law enforcement and the jail situation, because he acted like he didn't have any authority over that. So he lied about that. He also lied about the warrant situation. And the Democrats are pushing about having warrants for each illegal right now. But we go back to U.S. Code 8-1357 that was passed in 1951 by a Democrat Congress. That's what permitted some warrantless searches. And every Congress and every president, Democrat and Republican since, has continued that. And that has to stay if we're ever going to get these people out of here, because if we have to get a warrant for every person, we'll never achieve the goal.
No, you're exactly right. It does seem like they're throwing up every obstacle that they can. It's interesting, Richard. Sanctuary state, no sanctuary state, sanctuary city, no sanctuary city. Americans are sort of crazily split down the middle on this. I mean, it goes across political ideology, but what that tells me is half the independents believe you ought to have sanctuary and half of them don't. So, there is no advantage either way on this situation right now. 2/3 of Americans do not believe illegals should get benefits. I'm saying who are the 1/3 that think they should? So, Richard, it's an insane situation going on up there.
Well, it is insane. And I think it's instructive for us to look at the comparison of different states. And in Minnesota, I think they've deported something in the neighborhood of 4,000 people in the last year. And we see all of the issues we've had there. If you look in Texas, in that same period, we've deported 70,000 people with very, very few issues during that time period. And it's the same thing if you look at Florida or other states around the country. The states that are cooperating with law enforcement are getting the job done without problems. The states that are not cooperating, we have problems and delays and issues in every one of them.
Yeah, I mean, I can speak for the state of Florida where I reside. I mean, we don't have any of these issues. I mean, our sheriffs cooperate with ICE. We don't, I mean, occasionally we'll see a small group demonstrate, but I mean, nobody ever gets in the way of ICE operations. People can demonstrate peacefully. It's small groups, nothing like we see in Minnesota. And that's sort of the shocking thing, Richard. These people in Minnesota, I mean, they're organized. It's like organized chaos, doing everything they can to disrupt legal operations. Let me get to another point on this. The political fallout now. You got Democrats in the Senate wanting to hold up this DHS funding bill, and that's going to affect like the Coast Guard and other operations, and then it's going to have no effect on ICE. They're wanting to do some crazy stuff, like you mentioned, warrants for each criminal, no more going out there roving patrols. They want to have cameras on all the agents, and they don't want them wearing face masks. Well, hell, if you're being doxxed, you got to have some cover. I don't think the administration is going to oppose cameras. I think they're going to support that. But some of this other stuff, Richard, that just makes no sense to give in to these demands. I mean, it's not affecting ICE. ICE was funded under the big, beautiful bill. This affects other parts of Homeland Security.
Well, it just goes to show that the operative word is resistance. And the Democrats, because of their left wing base, have to show that they're fighting and resisting the Trump administration everywhere, regardless of the situation. They want no compromise. Compromise to them appears like surrender. I thought it was interesting earlier this week that a group went into the Capitol in Minnesota and protested and put pressure on Governor Walz to hold the line and not compromise with the Trump administration. And so their left wing is pulling them or helping them to go further left than they were before. And that fighting on every issue is the thing that if we can let the public know and they realize that, then the public will understand that all of the complaints, there's going to be complaints on every issue. Then all of a sudden it's like the little boy that cried wolf sometimes.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, look, it happened in a completely different part of the country, but what they're basically advocating in Minnesota is what this communist mayor in New York recently did. I don't know if you saw the video, but NYPD came into a house and there was some lunatic in there, with a knife going to the NYPD guy. And after he's saying, stop, drop the knife, drop it. Well, then he finally shot him. What does the mayor come out and do? He asked that prosecutors not charge the guy, but rather put him in a mental institution. I mean, Richard, these leftists, I'm telling you something, upside down is right side up. I mean, you never know what's going on in these places, but I do know this. In areas where you have these left-wing, we'll call it politicians as leaders, things are way worse than in law and order states like Texas, like Florida. I could name a bunch of them: Indiana, Kentucky, North Carolina. I mean, you just don't hear these things happening in other places, and it's just it's really. I'm glad to see Holman's up there doing what he's doing. He's a no nonsense type guy. He is respected, if not not necessarily liked, but respected on the other side of the aisle. And when I hear Democrats praising Tom Holman as the calming force, we've made some progress somewhere. All right, let me move on. Richard, 4-day government shutdown. I don't think too many people even noticed it.
Well, I agree. I'm laughing because I think for most people, they thought it was a Groundhog Day holiday weekend. and there's probably less than 25% of the people that really understood what's going on if they went to a national park or someplace that was shut down. But most people would have just thought, well, it's a weekend or a holiday weekend and didn't even know the difference. And that's a sad thing because it was costly. The thing that always frosts my cake when we have these shutdowns is they say, woe is me for the federal government employees. But every shutdown in history, the federal government employees basically go home and then afterwards they come back and they get their back pay. So it's like a paid vacation for them. They never suffer, but yet the media always talks about the poor federal employees, and we need to get that off the table as a negotiating point.
Well, we don't need to have shutdowns, period. I mean, that is just ridiculous. And,
Yes.
it happens on both sides, I hate to say. All right, let's move on. There was obviously disturbing news out of Arizona this week. It's the lead story on the broadcast news every night. Again, Savannah Guthrie's mother apparently kidnapped. And Richard, as best I can tell from media reports, I saw, there was a flurry of investigations on Wednesday evening, but they still don't really have a whole lot of clues. What do you make about what's going on in Arizona? Can you add anything to sort of the lack of information coming out of the authorities?
Well, the thing that interests me is to watch the different law enforcement people locally on the ground, how they're handling the case. And then when you see other people analyzing it around the country who've been in law enforcement, and when they talk about how unusual the local law enforcement are handling this case, that's what pricks my ears up, because you would think they would be handling it in a similar situation as most cases around the country, but they're not. And I would like to give them the benefit of the doubt that they are holding back evidence so that while they're working the case and there's something actually going on. But it does bother me when I see law enforcement people questioning what they're doing and saying it's atypical.
The troubling thing about this, and obviously your hearts go out to the family. I saw the video last on Wednesday evening, the pleas that they were making. Gosh, it's like, no pun intended, a hostage negotiation. There's no one to negotiate with. I mean, that's got to be extremely frustrating for the family. I mean, very difficult situation. At this point, I mean, like I said, it's the lead story on every newscast every day. So hopefully the family can get some closure to this. Hopefully the mother's still alive and they can find out, who did it. I mean, because it's got, when you see Nancy Grace involved now, okay, this is a crime story. Everybody, it's become the story of the day. And Richard, until they find out who did it and is there a ransom? Is it a kidnap? What is it? It's going to continue to play out this way. So,
Well,
any other
yes, and
thoughts?
another example of what I was referring to a minute ago is the issue about a ransom note. And you have people on a TV station saying they got a ransom note, and law enforcement saying that there isn't a ransom note, and the poor family's caught in the middle with inconsistent communication from different players on this stage of what's really going on. So it's difficult for us to really know what's going on when those people can't even agree with what's happening.
Yeah, yeah, great point. Well, let's shift over to the international stage for a minute. And, I want to talk about two things almost simultaneously, although they're distinctly different. Obviously, the Russia Ukraine situation, and then what's going on between President Trump and the Ayatollah and the Iranian leadership. Folks, this gentleman who we don't hear a lot from him, but he's President Trump's lead negotiator, Steve Witkoff, longtime associate of Trump. I mean, this man is everywhere. He is trying to negotiate peace between the Russians and the Ukrainians. Richard, there's been some progress. If you listen to some of the press reports, it almost seems like, to put it in football parlance for this weekend's big game, they're sort of inside the 10-yard line if you believe the news stories. I mean, are we literally within, in the red zone right now for possibly getting a deal?
Well, the problem is, even if you're close, close only counts on horseshoes and hand grenades. So that's a problem. I was encouraged today. I saw that they had agreed to swap 314 prisoners. So I think that's encouraging. But each side is incented to fight hard right now because they want to put pressure on the other side to negotiate, and or they want to gain more territory before a peace is concluded. And so to me, I think it's going to be most ferocious before a deal is concluded to put that pressure on it. And I hope this is an indication that we are close.
Well, you bring up a great point because battles continue to rage. Putin is going through soldiers like you know what. I mean, the losses are staggering. Interesting thing, though, Ukrainians have been using drones to bomb some of Russian oil refineries and oil distribution facilities, and that puts pressure. They're hard enough already recruiting and getting people, to die on the front lines for Putin. They've had to go into other countries. They're paying mercenaries. I mean, they're tricking people. But now, if the oil facilities are attacked, that's going to further reduce the money they need to pay to finance this war, Richard.
Yes, absolutely. And I think it's instructive. If you go back and see the movie Enemy at the Gates about World War II and how the Russians threw people in Stalingrad as basically receptacles for bullets to work, so the Germans would run out of bullets, if you will. The Russians don't care about life the way we do. They'll throw people into the fray, let them get killed as part of their bigger strategy to win the war, which is unfortunate. And President Trump, I think, has shown that empathy, that he doesn't want people to die and wants to get this over so we can spare lives on both sides.
Yeah, Putin, he has no regard for human life whatsoever, other than maybe his own. Iranian. I mean, we saw last month 20 to 30,000 protesters killed. They were firing machine guns into these people, using military grade weapons. They didn't stand a chance. Now, Trump has moved, a fleet of ships to within striking distance of Iran, where if he wants to use military capabilities, he can. He is, in no uncertain terms, Richard, told them they need to cooperate with the United States, first on the nuclear issue, then on dealing with the protesters. Richard, is that good enough? And again, every time we see some of these situations, Trump does what he says he's going to do. Where are we right now between the United States and Iran?
Well, I think your point there was excellent. And from the standpoint, unlike quote unquote politicians, when Trump says he might do something, people better believe it. He may not, but don't be surprised if he does. And him putting that pressure on there, to me, is so good because those people also have no regard for human life. The first time I ever learned that was in 1988 when Iran and Iraq were at war, and they would put little kids hand in hand to walk across minefields to clear minefields. That's how they did it. They would sacrifice their children to clear minefields so they can fight. And so that regime has no heart whatsoever. And so I hope that he'll keep the pressure on from that standpoint, and certainly on the nuclear program as well.
Richard, we're going to take a 30-second break here, but when we come back, we've got tons more to cover with you. Economics, Kamala Harris, politics, you name it. See you in 30 seconds.
Freeze drying again?
Never know what could happen.
Whatever the future may bring, dinner can be certain.
Visit patriot.tv/harvest today.
And we're back. Hey, Richard, we can keep an eye on the markets lately. The crypto market is almost damn near in free fall, literally collapsing on a daily basis. and it's bringing other assets down with it. 1.7 trillion wiped out in crypto so far. Technology stocks getting pummeled, but the overall market is not. Meaning, money's coming out of technology, but it's going into like the Walmarts of the world, drug companies, oil companies. I mean, you've seen a clear rotation because the S&P 500 is still within a couple points of its all-time high. Now, pick a day. I mean, markets are up, markets are down. They're down a little bit Wednesday, Thursday, they're getting pummeled. But this crypto thing is a big deal because it looks to me, Richard, like people are having to sell other assets, possibly to make margin calls on the cryptocurrencies, because Bitcoin is literally it's literally falling off a cliff.
Well, as my dad used to say, bulls make money, bears make money, and the hogs get led to the slaughterhouse. And so I think you're correct that a lot of people were betting on the crypto market and went out on that margin thinking that they would really multiply their earnings, and they've been caught. The technology market, I think it's uncertainty with AI and other things, because we're in and going to be in a period of big and rapid change. One of the things when I speak about change, especially to college students in leadership programs, I will hold up this slide rule and I'll tell them that this was my computer in college. We didn't have computers. We used these instruments for mathematical calculations, just like the space program did before computers were available. And in my lifetime, it's gone from that to AI. What's it going to do from this point in the future? And so that causes uncertainty, which affects the market.
Interesting thing, by a narrow margin, Republicans are trusted on the economy over Democrats, like 46-44. However, independents, they're starting to move away from the Trump administration's economic policies. That's a troubling scenario right there, because you have to have independents to win elections. And speaking of elections, Richard, let's dive into this a little bit, because on the Republican side, J.D. Vance is a far and away a big lead. This assumes, if you go by what Trump's saying, that Vance is going to be the presidential nominee and Marco Rubio is going to be the vice presidential nominee. We don't know if it's going to turn out that way, but at least on our side of the equation, it's sort of looking that way. Not so on the Democratic side. At one point, Gavin Newsom was the flavor of the week, but now the former vice president, Kamala Harris, is going on a book tour. She's setting up web pages. Richard, is Harris going to run against Newsom, J.B. Pritzker, Governor Shapiro, Governor Beshear of Kentucky? I mean, handicap the Democratic field. I know it's not your bailiwick, but we're talking politics, and they're going to come after the 2026 midterms. Campaigns will get launched.
Well, I hope Kamala Harris runs, because that will help popcorn sales around the country. I think that Andy Beshear, as well as Shapiro in Pennsylvania, to me, those are two stronger candidates. Newsom has his own baggage as well. Kamala Harris has the entertainment factor. That's the only thing I've missed is the word salads that we used to get regularly. And I think she's trying to push for relevance. But she's also got to overcome this negative taste in the mouth of the donors because of her disrespect for their donations and how she just threw away over $1 billion in 100 days. And ironically, that's what she named her book, I think, 107 Days. And it should have been about how she threw all that money away.
I'm going to agree with you on Governor Shapiro of Pennsylvania and Governor Beshear of Kentucky. I mean, Governor Beshear of Kentucky, he's got a super majority Republican House and Senate, and yet he gets stuff done. He's been elected twice. He got elected with 60% of the votes. I mean, he's popular in the state, has pragmatic programs, but Richard, the Democratic Party has moved so far left. I mean, it seems to me like, Pritzker, I think he's too fat for the job, to be honest with you. I think it's going to come down to Newsom or Harris, and two Californians fighting it out to put California left-wing failing policies the rest of the country. That's a pretty good recipe for J.D. Vance or Marco Rubio.
Well, yes, and I would say if it's Newsom or Harris versus Bashir and Shapiro, that would tell me that the Democrats probably would not have a moderate type candidate in the foreseeable future. That would mean that their base had gone so far left that the moderates are continuing to be chased out. And I
How
think
about AOC?
regardless, we have good candidates, but I think it's even easier if we have further left candidates.
AOC polling at 15% in the Democratic poll, and don't have to leave it out. Don Jr. polling at 20% in the Republican. So, Richard, strange things have happened this far out.
Well, yes, all you got to do is remember June of 2015 and the Golden Staircase.
Yeah.
It totally
Yeah.
changed everything.
Well, speaking of that, Trump's approval rating right now, he's sitting at about 43, 44%. Richard, 73% of Democrats want him impeached. I mean, I know Trump derangement syndrome on the left, but let's just play this out here. If Democrats take the House, what do you think the chances of impeaching Trump are, even though they may not control the Senate?
I think it's 100%, and it'd probably take them less than 30 minutes once they swear them in to do it. I think that'd be the first order of business they would do, because they are so frustrated right now. That would relieve some of that tension for them.
No doubt about it. And hey, what about the news? The Washington Post lays off 1/3 of its staff. I mean, you know, I deliberately watched some of the left-wing networks to get the reaction, and it was visceral. I mean, they blame Trump cozying up to Jeff Bezos, the billionaire of billionaires, fourth, fifth richest guy in the world, and he's laying off these poor people who work at the Washington Post, albeit they're left-leaning. Richard, another example of left-leaning publication that's simply having financial problems.
Well, they're ignoring the reality of the market, the newspaper markets first. And they have this entitlement philosophy that they believe they ought to be entitled to their job and income, regardless of competition or markets or anything else. And I think the Washington Post lost something like $100 million last year. And even with Bezos' resources, it'd be foolish to continue to keep pouring that money down a hole. Now, I think they want to bring it back as a different type organization, and they'll try that. But the newspaper industry, as you well know, is in very bad shape right now.
Yeah, and the Washington Post, they lost 250,000 of their subscribers when they didn't endorse a Democrat for president. So do I have any sympathy for them? No. You can get political news damn near anywhere. Just it's happened to have a Washington Post headline tag behind it. I think it's losing its relevance. Speaking of relevance, Trump sort of floated an idea that drew the ire of the left, this idea of federal intervention in state elections. Richard, your thoughts on that grenade? Trump, speaking of grenades, Trump sort of lobbed that one out there.
Well, I like it that he keeps stimulating them to respond to different things, and they can not keep up with all the things he's doing. No one's ever seen energy like this. I don't like the word intervene as much as monitoring, like Jimmy Carter used to do around the world. If we're making sure the elections are run well, I think that's okay. But you and I know there'll be elections in certain states that they would purposely want to bring the feds in so they could accuse the feds of overstepping their bounds. But we've got to make sure the elections are legitimate. And we've done that for countries all over the world. Why can't we do it for our own country?
No, boy, that's a great point. And, monitoring is one thing. It's probably a better word than intervening, no question. But the left is going to use whatever they can to get their base stirred up because of an election coming up. And whether it's true or not, they're going to do everything to incite that base. One bit of bad news we got, Richard. U.S. Supreme Court validated California's redistricting. That's basically going to offset what Texas did. Richard, doesn't look like we're going to have these necessary aggregate gains that Trump was hoping for after the Supremes put their stamp of approval in California.
Well, I think that's correct. And one of the things it may do is it may further stimulate more people to leave California faster, and including more businesses. And California and New York especially haven't really realized yet that they start taking some of these big taxpayers and losing them to other states, it's going to put them in a much more precarious financial situation.
Yeah, no question about it. Well, Richard, we're out of time for today. Thanks again for your commentary. Always sharp as a tack. Much appreciated. Folks, we'll be back next week, Wednesday and Friday, half-hour shows. We'll see you next week. Thanks for viewing Patriot TV, our sponsor.